Hello, I'm Jonathan Mason, and in this video I want to explain what diabetes is and how it affects the normal function of your body. Now, I'm not a doctor, so I must make this disclaimer, and I'll see you after that. For us to understand diabetes, we must understand how carbohydrates are absorbed into the body. Now, carbohydrates in their digestible form is known as glucose. This means that when you look at your food packaging and you see carbohydrates, it normally means the glucose value. But not all foods are the same, because some foods have what they call dietary fiber, which is a carbohydrate, but it's not digestible. So the glucose value will be the carbohydrates minus the digestible fiber. But before we can really understand diabetes, we must understand how the body normally functions. Because if we understand how the body is meant to work, then when something goes wrong, we'll better understand how we can rectify it. So how does the body function normally? Well, food comes into your body and gets broken down and absorbed into the bloodstream through the mouth, the stomach, the small intestine, which is called the duodenum, and the large intestine. Now, most food is absorbed in the bloodstream either as carbohydrates, proteins, or fats. But here we are going to talk primarily about the digestion of carbohydrates in the bloodstream to fuel the cells of the body. So I'm going to be using some slides, as I believe these rudimentary graphics will be able to get the message over far better than my voice alone. Here we have the basic elements that will help us understand how glucose gets into our cells. First important organ is the pancreas. Now, the pancreas secretes two hormones, which are insulin and glucagon. The second organ is the liver, which acts as a storeroom for the excess glucose. Then below we have the bloodstream with a lot of cells lining the bloodstream. So this is the basic setup. In order for us to give ourselves energy, we eat some food which are digested into our bodies in the form of glucose. This is normally the default food type for our bodies. The green dots are the glucose that has entered the bloodstream. When this happens, the glucose will attach itself to the cell walls, as in the area circled in red. This causes the body to signal the pancreas that it needs some insulin to assist with the transfer of glucose into the cell. So the pancreas manufactures insulin and secretes it into the bloodstream. The insulin immediately attaches itself to the cell walls to assist the transfer of glucose into the cell, as seen in the area circled in red. Now, this is a very important part of the process in understanding diabetes, as it is crucial to how our bodies get energy quickly and efficiently. So let us take a closer look at the cell. Now, this is the basic setup. The cell membrane is made up of lipids. Lipids are a type of fat. This is important as it makes a cell waterproof and prevents the body from becoming soluble. The glucose, which is depicted in green, is not lipid soluble. This is important because it means that the glucose cannot just diffuse into the cell by itself. It needs something else to assist it in getting into the interior of the cell, and this is where the carrier comes into play. This carrier moves to where the glucose is and begins the slow process of transferring the glucose into the body. The insulin stimulates the process and speeds up the transfer of glucose into the cell. This results in what is termed the normal rate of transfer of glucose into the cell from the bloodstream. Once the glucose is in the interior of the cell, it can be converted into energy known as ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. So now let us zoom out again and have a look at the bigger picture again. In this graphic, we can see that all the cells have glucose in them, and that there is an excess glucose still in the bloodstream. If left in the bloodstream, it will elevate our blood glucose levels, which is not healthy for us. So the body has to store it somewhere. The body is designed to take the excess glucose and convert it into glycogen, which is a form of a fat, and it stores it in the liver. This process all happens inside the liver. Now, once in the liver, the glycogen will wait until it's needed to supply more energy to the body. When the cells have used up all their energy, it will signal that they are hungry. The body knows that it still has stores of glycogen in the liver, and this is a signal for the pancreas to produce and secrete a hormone known as glucagon. Now, glucagon breaks down the glycogen into glucose. It is in this form that the liver releases it back into the bloodstream. The process then begins all over again with the release of insulin, etc. But when we eat too much, the body can't store all that glycogen in the liver, so it has to do something with it. The excess glycogen is then converted into body fat and is stored in the fat cells of the adipose tissue. So what happens when we get hungry again and we are not consuming any more carbohydrates? This is the situation we have here. There is no glucose in the cell of the body and no glycogen in the liver. The body then switches to using fat stored in its adipose tissue. The fat is released into the bloodstream in the form of free fatty acids. Like the glucose, it attaches itself to the cells that need the energy. So let us have a look at the cell close up, like we did with the glucose transfer. Here we have the basic setup with the cell, the carrier, and the free fatty acid on the cell wall. Now, if you remember, the cell wall is made up of lipids, which is a type of fat. But the free fatty acids are lipid soluble, so it does not need the white little carrier to assist it to get into the cell. The free fatty acid goes into the cell by diffusion at a normal rate of transfer. Now, this is very good news for us, as this means the cells are being fed quickly and efficiently by our own body fat. This mechanism means that we can go throughout the day and night not worrying too much about when we need to eat, as the body has the mechanism to cope with short periods of fasting. Diabetes is when the system fails to work properly. There are two types of diabetes, and it is important to understand both, as they sometimes have similar symptoms, but they are two totally different failures to the system. So I'm going to talk about them both, albeit that my emphasis in this program is primarily concerned with type 2 diabetes. So let us have a look at type 1 diabetes first. Here we have the same basic setup that we had before with the pancreas, the liver, bloodstream, and the cells. As before, we ingest glucose and are now waiting for the insulin to be released into the bloodstream by the pancreas. But this is where the system fails. The beta cells in the pancreas fail to manufacture the insulin, or at least not enough of it. So let us have a closer look at the cell, circled in red as we did before. Here we see that the glucose is attached to the cell wall, and the carrier is there to transfer it through the interior of the cell. Remember that the glucose is not lipid soluble, so it needs the carrier to assist it. But in the absence of insulin, the transfer is slow. In fact, it is 5 times as slow as a normal rate of transfer. This means that it is too slow to stop our hunger pangs, which then want you to eat more. This is very bad news for a type 1 diabetic, as they are in a real danger of rapidly becoming hyperglycemic if their diabetes is not treated. The treatment for type 1 diabetic is normally insulin injections, and this ensures that the body gets enough insulin and it can continue to function as normal. So we will now continue to see how the system fails in a type 2 diabetic. With a type 2 diabetic, the system fails at a different point in the process. So let's start with the basic setup. Here we have the pancreas, liver, bloodstream, and the cells of the body. We ingest glucose into our bloodstream, and they attach themselves to our cell walls. This immediately calls for the release of insulin. In type 2 diabetes, the pancreas is working well, so it releases the required amount of insulin. Like before, the insulin goes to assist the transfer of glucose into the cells of the body. So let us have a closer look at the cell and how the glucose is transferred into the interior of the cell. In this graphic, we can see that the glucose is ready to be transferred into the cell. The carrier is there to do the transfer, and the insulin is there to speed it up. So it's all set to go. But this is where things go wrong. The cell has become insulin resistant. This means that the insulin can't function properly. It is believed that the cell has become resistant to the insulin because we have bombarded our bodies with excessive carbohydrates. Now, this excessive bombardment of sweet and processed foods have caused our bodies to reject the foods in our modern day diets. This has resulted in our bodies becoming insulin resistant. And the more we bombard our bodies with these types of foods, the more insulin resistant we become. Being insulin resistant means that the transfer of glucose into the cell is very slow. The carrier transfers the glucose into the cell 5 times slower than normal. Depending on how insulin resistant you are will dictate your rate of transfer. It could be anywhere between normal and 5 times as slow. So what does this mean? As can be seen, it has some similarities with type 1, but it is by no means the same. The only similarity is that the glucose gets transferred into the cells very, very slowly, but the treatment should be very different. This once again leaves you hungry, and your body continues to ask for more food. And when you eat more food, your body stores it as fat. But the dangers of not treating your type 2 diabetes are serious. If not treated, you are in the danger of becoming hyperglycemic. The rest of your system is still working well, but it cannot utilize the fats in your body as you still have glucose in your system. Now, the treatment of type 2 diabetes is quite varied, and in different tablets doing different things to your body, from making your pancreas produce more insulin in an attempt to try and increase the sensitivity of your cells to insulin. None of these methods have reversed the problem or addressed the real cause. This means that you become more and more insulin resistant and your weight continues to increase. This suppresses your metabolism even further, and this results in a downward spiral. Diet is an essential part of managing your type 2 diabetes, as it is a primary cause of the problem, regardless of whether you're using pharmaceuticals or whether you're trying to control it by diet alone. Now, the advice that I was given by the NHS nutritionist was just to carry on like normal so that I could have a stable diet, and the doctor could medicate me accordingly, and in so doing, manage my type 2 diabetes. But the error in this system of management is that it doesn't alleviate our hunger. And as we grow older, our metabolism slows down and we need less and less food. But we seldom reduce the amount we eat, as we are always hungry and we are continually gaining weight. So we require more and more medication. But the good news is there is another method of fueling our bodies. Now, if you remember at the beginning, I said most food is absorbed into the bloodstream as carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Now, proteins and fats do not require insulin. I only spoke about carbohydrates because type 2 diabetes is a disease that is directly linked to the body's resistance to insulin. And carbohydrates require insulin to speed up the process of transferring the glucose into the cells of the body where they can be utilized. Now, other food types don't require insulin for their absorption as shown with fats. So this means that if you change the ratio of what you eat, you are then able to start reversing your type 2 diabetes and start living a more healthy and energetic lifestyle. But it is important to note that you do need some carbohydrates into your body because your nervous system and a few others require carbohydrates for their fuel. So you have to have a certain amount of carbohydrates in your body. And in this program, I will show you how to govern how many carbohydrates you need in your body, and as you age, how you can adjust that level so that you will know exactly what you're doing as you go along. All my videos in this program are free to look at. I give you the exact diet plan that I followed and the formula for you to calculate your own meal plans. I also give you the information of how to go into the diet safely and to avoid some of the experiences I had and how to come out of it safely. There's also advice on how to manage your diet and accordingly your diabetes once you have stabilized. I give you advice on what to look for as you grow older and maintain your self-rewarding health. Reward yourself with good health and change your lifestyle like I did, and enjoy the more vitality and experience the joy of loving. I want to thank you for listening to Understanding Diabetes. Please go to my website and check out the videos, which will have a description next to them of what each video is all about. Now, in my next video, pharmaceutical medication, good or bad, I explain the problem with them and why we need them sometimes. Understanding the role of pharmaceutical medication will help you evaluate your risks that you are exposed to, both with and without medication. It will assist you to make better choices about where you are with your health. So please join me in my next video, pharmaceutical medication, good or bad. If you would like to help me reverse type 2 diabetes around the world, then please like, subscribe and share these videos. But if you would like to get more involved in helping me to spread the word in a more direct way, then please go to my website where you can find the program's mission statement along with a complete set of videos and a whole lot of other helpful aids that a type 2 diabetic could need. It is also a place where I hope to build a supportive community environment. Now, I would like to thank anyone in advance who graciously donates to the cause and shares these videos. It is this support that enables this information to reach more people and to change lives. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.